Welcome back to the video series of compiler design. Our today's topic for this particular video, that is instruction level parallelism. I am your instructor Mr. Ankit Patel. So let's start with the outlines for the today's lecture. The first outline that we are discussing about the processor architecture. Next, that is a code scheduling constraint and path structure of the assembler. So all these three topics we are discussing in this particular video. So let's start with the processor architecture. So now in processor architecture, again we need to understand these three different subtitles. That is the first one, that is the instruction pipelines and branch delay. So what is the use of the pipelining and what is the delay, that we are discussing in this particular topic. Next, that is the pipeline execution, how this pipeline execution will be possible and how it will done. And the last one, there is a multiple instruction issue, right? If we just execute the multiple instruction at the same time, what will happen? Okay, now so let's discuss with the instruction pipelines and the branch delay. So first of all, we need to understand about the instruction pipelining. That is a mechanism in which every new instruction is fetched at the every clock. Okay, so we know about the clock, right? A single clock is there. So at each and every clock cycle, one instruction is fetched, and at the same time, the preceding instruction are getting processed through the pipeline. So what to be next? That instruction is stored in the pipelining. We all know about the program counter, right? Program counter is a one kind of register that will store the address of the next instruction. But similarly, if here our suppose the data is dependent on the other instruction, right? So there is some dependency is there, so we need to use the pipelining. Here the pipeline is simply a mechanism that a new instruction is fetched at the single clock, at the same time the preceding instruction are getting processed through the pipelining. Similarly, every instruction undergoes through the 5 different stages. What are that? The first one, that is a fetch, next that is the decode, next execute, then memory access, and finally we are writing the result. So in bracket I have also mentioned the code. IF means instruction fetch, ID means instruction decode, EX that means execute, MEM memory access, and write WD. Okay, so these are the 5 different steps that will be happen if you want to execute any instruction. Similarly, next one, that is instruction pipeline and branch delay. In that particular, I have seen the figure in which how these instructions are executed step by step. Like if you taking the at the single clock, first the instruction is fetched, then after it will decode, then execute, then it will look at the memory, and finally we are writing the result. So first instruction fetch, after this first instruction we are get back to the next instruction. So here if you are using the pipeline concept, now suppose if you are talking about the single instruction, right, what it will take, it will just possible it will take a 5 step. First it will fetch, decode, execute, memory access, and write. But similarly I have given the 5 stage 5 instruction example. So here the parallelism is there. First instruction fetch, after the decoding phase next instruction is fetched, right? Similarly next instruction decode phase, the third one is fetched. So all this activity is done, you can see, in the 9th step. But if each and every instruction is executed at a independent, at the same time 5 into 5, total 25 stages are required. But here by using the pipelining, only 9 stages is required. So that is the advantage of the pipelining. Now let's just try to understand about how this pipeline execution is possible. So there are some instructions that take the several clock to execute, right? As I told you, if some dependency is there, then what happen? It will require a more clock cycle, because the a preceding instruction have not completed its task. It has not write its data. So next instruction, how it will be processed? So it require more than one clock, right? So for that instance, memory load is the operation that take the several clock to execute. Okay, so for the memory loading time, it will require several clock. So even if a processor can issue only one operation per clock, several operations might be their execution state at the same line. As I told you, because of there is some dependency in the program. So all the instruction cannot be fully pipeline, right? So we are not getting all the instruction in the pipeline because there are some instruction that is depend on the preceding instruction data. So at the same time, the memory is require more clock cycle. So that is a big task for the pipeline execution. And similarly, what are the issues if you want to execute the multiple instruction? So the issue that in instruction pipeline mechanism, multiple instruction can be processed, and for that purpose, the arrangement of the execution of the multiple instructions can be made by multiplying the number of available stages in the pipeline by number of instruction issue width. So as I told you, how many number of width you have available, how many number of stages is available. According to the stages, you are just dividing the number of instruction. In the previous example, I have shown the 5 stages, right? Because 5 instruction are executed. Each and every stage is instruction fetch, decode, execute, memory, access, and write byte. But here there is no any dependency. But if some dependency is required, some of the instructions require the more clock. And if we have the limited number of stages, at the same time, the there is a problem is called as a multiple instruction. Okay. So the multiple instruction issue can be handled with the hardware or software parallelism, right? So there are the different type of parallelisms that multiple instruction can be handled by the hardware or the software parallelism. Okay, same way the next topic, that is a code scheduling constraint. So we have the different scheduling constraint, right? So what are the constraint is the first one, that is called as control dependence constraint. Next, that is a data dependence constraint, and next one, that is a resource constraint. So let's just discuss about the first one, that is a control dependency constraint. What happened in this dependency? All the operation executed in the original program must be executed in the optimized program, right? So here the what the control dependency is, what it will tell, if you are optimize the particular program, so all this activity, all the operation that is done in the without optimized program, that is also just work in the optimized program also. Similarly, what is data dependency constraint? So the operation must generate the same result as the corresponding one in the original program. So you need to take care about the result that cannot be changed, right? If some dependency is there, so right, suppose x is depend on the y, so definitely first y operation will be completed, and then after x will be evaluated, otherwise the result will be vary. So same thing is happen here. So data dependency constraint is what it will tell. It will tell the operator generate the same result before and after. Right? You are optimizing the data or whatever you are doing in the program, the result may not be changed. And the last constraint, that is the resource constraint. We all know about there is some delay in the program just because of the input and output resources. So resource constraint, it is a scheduler must not oversubscribe the resource on the machine, right? Oversubscribe means what? If we know there is a only single printer in our laboratory or with us, and there are the multiple devices that are getting the same printout with the single machine, so at the same time the scheduler should avoid the different machines. There is some boundary, like 5-10 machine at a time can print give a printout. Rest of the machine should be in the queue. So that type of scheduler take care about. Otherwise, what happen? All the resources are in the waiting mode. So that should not be happen. So these are the some constraints that we need to handle while we are taking take care about the code scheduling constraint. Last topic, that is a part structure of the assembler. So we all know about the assembler. Assembler is what? It will simply convert a assembly level program into the machine code. But here the different passes is there. How this assembly program we will convert it into the machine code. So for that we have the different pass, pass 1, pass 2, or we have the multiple pass also. So at when the multiple pass is required, that we will discuss here. But for this thing, just understand about the compiler. The compiler will convert the high level code into the different target code by using the different 6 phases is there. But here in assembler, there are the different passes there. So the work of the assembler is a program to convert the instruction written in a low level language into real locatable machine code and generating the information for the loader, right? So here what is the function of the assembler? It is a simply will convert the assembly program to the real locatable machine code. Assembler generate the instruction of the symbol and mnemonics in operation field and find the value of the symbol to produce the machine code. So it will use a different data structure where each and every instruction, we all know about the assembly level program, it will be simply a collection of the instruction. So all the instruction in background, there is some code is there, right? Add, multiplication, these are the mnemonics, it's called as an instruction, but there is some code behind these instruction. So all these required field will be stored in the form of the symbol to produce the machine code. And if the assembler does this work in a one scan or in a single scan, then it is called as a single pass assembler, right? So all these activities will done with the single scanning, and it is called as a single pass assembler. And similarly, if assembly take a multiple scan, then it is called as a multiple pass assembler. So there is no any restriction to have only a one pass or two pass assembler. There will be a three pass assembler also there if the issue or if the scanning is not done in a single pass or a two pass assembler. So let's just discuss about the what happened in the past one, right? So single pass assembler. So in a single pass assembler, what will happen? So single pass assembler define the symbols and literal and separate the symbol, mnemonic opcode and operation field. We all know about the in an instruction. There is a symbol is there like add. Its opcode is there, that is called as an operation code is there, and operand field, the data, right? That is to be separated in this single pass. Next one, a single pass assembler will perform the analysis. Only analysis is built to, and it build the symbol table and literal table to remember the respective key, right? So it will use this data structure symbol table and literal table. That is, will symbol table will store the all the symbol, and literal table it will store the all the literal in your program, and keep track of location counter and perform the processing. Location counter is a counter from where it will start, right? So it will track the location counter history and process the pseudo operation and construct the intermediate representation. So that is the task of the single pass assembler. Now what will happen if the second pass is required? When the second pass is required, if some program contain the forward references, right? If the assembly program call another program, right? At that time the forward references is there. So to resolve that will the forward references will not resolve a task in the single pass. For that we require a second pass. Okay, so two pass assembler means what? Two pass assembler forward reference is easily and use the symbol table, instruction register and give the target program. Right, that is the task of the two pass assembler. That is also generate the object code by converting the symbolic opcode into the respective numeric opcode. So we have the symbol like addition. For addition we have the add, multiplication mul is there, for moving the data from register to data like muv is there. So these are the symbolic name. For that we have the respective numerical code is there. So it will also generate the object code for that. It also generate the data for literal and look for the value of the symbol. And finally we can say that the synthesis is performed by the second pass assembler. So like in compiler, there are the two phases there, analysis and synthesis phases there. Similarly, in assembler is also there, pass 1 and pass 2 is there. Most probably all the tasks will be done in the pass 2, second pass. But if there is some problem in the second pass or some forward reference is a more complex program, then we require another pass also for the processing. But it is better to reduce the more number of passes, because if the number of passes will be increased, it will require more memory, more time to process the our assembly program, right? And finally, I will show you the structure of this assembler. So in left side we have the assembly program, and right side we produce the target program by using the pass 1 and pass 2. And obviously the symbol double data structure is required, right? So hope you all understand the topic that we have discussed in this particular video. Okay, so thank you very much. If you have any doubt, you can feel free to ask me. Thank you very much.